Have you ever heard of a fake marriage proposal that was never about love, but only about humiliation? What if the person being humiliated decided to fight back and turn the tables instead? This is not just a story about betrayal, but about dignity, courage, and how revenge can sometimes come in the most unexpected way. Stay until the end, because the lesson here might change the way you look at love and betrayal forever. And if you enjoy stories of secrets, betrayal, and powerful comebacks, subscribe now to join us in uncovering the truth behind every wedding. Emily grew up in a small town where dreams often felt bigger than the streets she walked every day. She carried hope in her heart like others carried groceries home after work, holding on to the idea that love was something pure and lasting. Even when life was tough and money was tight, she never lost that spark that made her believe her own story could turn out different. She wasn't looking for luxury or status. What she longed for was something far more meaningful: being chosen, being loved, being valued. And that quiet hope guided nearly every decision she made as she stepped into adulthood, holding tightly to the promise of a brighter tomorrow. She worked long hours at a local cafe, pouring coffee for strangers while secretly imagining her future. Every smile from a customer, every kind word she heard, seemed to add a little more weight to her belief that good people existed. Emily never allowed hardship to harden her heart. Instead, she wore kindness like a second skin, giving without asking in return. Friends would say she was too soft, too trusting, but Emily saw no other way to live. To her, the world was already full of enough bitterness. She refused to add to it. She was a dreamer, and dreamers don't survive without hope. At home, Emily carried responsibilities heavier than most her age. Her parents relied on her, and her younger siblings looked up to her as both sister and caretaker. The late nights she spent helping with homework or managing bills rarely left her time for herself. Yet, she found joy in it. She believed sacrifice was part of love, and she gave freely, even when it meant setting aside her own desires. What she didn't realize was how this very selflessness would later make her vulnerable to someone who saw her dreams not as beauty, but as weakness. For Emily, weddings weren't just ceremonies. They were symbols of everything she longed for: commitment, family, belonging. She would often stop to admire bridal shop windows, not out of vanity, but because they represented hope in its purest form. A white dress was more than fabric. It was a promise of safety, love, and a life built together. And while she knew her reality was far from glamorous, she held tight to that vision, almost as if the universe owed her a fairy tale after all the burdens she had carried with grace. She was the kind of person who celebrated small victories, whether it was saving a little money at the end of the month or seeing her siblings succeed at school. To her, happiness wasn't about grand gestures but about quiet, meaningful moments that reminded her life was worth every effort. But deep down, beneath the smile she wore every day, Emily wondered if she would ever find someone who saw her worth without her having to prove it. That silent question often lingered when she lay awake at night. And then came Ryan. He wasn't part of her world, at least not until their paths crossed one seemingly ordinary afternoon. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who drew attention without trying. When he looked at her, it felt as though every fairy tale she'd ever imagined was suddenly within reach. Emily didn't question why someone like him noticed her. Instead, she allowed herself to believe it was finally her turn for happiness. Ryan stepped into her life with gestures that seemed almost too perfect. A smile that melted away her doubts. A voice that carried reassurance. He seemed like everything she had quietly prayed for in the privacy of her heart. To Emily, it felt like destiny was finally delivering on its promise. She didn't stop to wonder why someone so admired would choose her, because questioning it meant risking the dream she had waited for so long to touch. Her friends were quick to notice, whispering their envy behind warm smiles. To them, it seemed like Emily had finally been rewarded for her patience, for her unwavering faith and love. They cheered her on, telling her she deserved it, and Emily let herself believe them. After years of selflessness and sacrifice, wasn't she entitled to a little magic of her own? It was a comforting thought, one she clung to more tightly than she realized. Yet life has a way of testing those who believe in dreams the most. For Emily, the story that was beginning to unfold would soon force her to confront not only her deepest hopes, but also her most painful fears. Because behind Ryan's smile, there were shadows she couldn't yet see, shadows that would soon teach her how fragile even the brightest dream can be. Ryan didn't just appear in Emily's life, he swept into it with the kind of charm that left everyone around him captivated. From the very beginning, he knew how to say the right things at the right time, as if he could read her heart. He wasn't loud or boastful, instead, he carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that drew people in without them even realizing it. To Emily, he felt like a dream materialized, someone who belonged to another world but had chosen to step into hers. And that choice made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. He showed up at the cafe where Emily worked, not once, but often. At first, she thought it was coincidence, just a man stopping by for coffee. But soon, his visits became intentional. He knew her schedule, remembered her favorite music playing faintly in the background, and always left generous tips with a kind smile. Ryan wasn't just polite, he made her feel as though she was the only person who mattered in that moment. It was a dangerous kind of attention, one that burrowed deep into her heart before she even realized how much it meant to her. Flowers followed not long after. A simple bouquet of daisies on a rainy day. Roses left at her doorstep when she least expected them. He didn't make grand speeches about love, but his actions painted a picture Emily had only dared to imagine. Her coworkers teased her gently, saying she had caught the eye of someone who knew how to treat a woman right. Emily blushed each time, but deep inside, she felt something new stirring, hope that this wasn't fleeting, that maybe this was what real love looked like. Ryan had a way of making the ordinary feel extraordinary. He walked her home after long shifts, not just to ensure her safety, but to share conversations that lingered in her mind long after he said goodbye. He asked about her family, her dreams, her fears, and he listened with an attentiveness that disarmed her. Emily wasn't used to being the center of anyone's world, but with Ryan, she began to believe she could be. Each step beside him felt like walking closer to the life she had always wanted. Her friends couldn't hide their jealousy. They whispered to each other when Ryan pulled up in his sleek car or opened doors for her like a gentleman straight out of a movie. Some even warned her not to fall too fast, but Emily silenced those thoughts quickly. How could something that felt so right possibly be wrong? She clung to the idea that Ryan was proof her patience had been worth it. To her, he wasn't just a man, he was the embodiment of every promise she thought life had denied her until now. Emily's heart, so used to carrying burdens, now carried the weight of anticipation instead. She pictured moments yet to come, holidays spent together, laughter filling quiet evenings, maybe even the family she had always dreamed of. Ryan fed those dreams with every small gesture, weaving himself seamlessly into the fabric of her imagination. For the first time, Emily dared to envision a future where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving in love. And that vision became almost impossible to let go of. Still, there were fleeting moments when something about Ryan felt too polished, too rehearsed. His compliments were flawless, his timing impeccable, and his charm unshakable. Emily brushed off those thoughts as insecurities, convincing herself that she was simply not used to being treated this well. After all, wasn't this what everyone wanted? To be adored without question, to be chosen by someone who seemed to have it all together. She silenced the tiny voice inside her that whispered things might not be what they seemed. Emily allowed herself to fall deeper, believing every word Ryan spoke and every smile he offered. She laughed at his jokes, hung on to his stories, and found herself craving his presence when he wasn't around. Her life, once filled with responsibility and routine, suddenly had color and excitement. It was as though Ryan had unlocked a door to a world she thought only existed in dreams, and she eagerly stepped through it, unaware of what might be waiting on the other side. What Emily couldn't see was that behind Ryan's perfectly crafted gestures, there was something darker lurking. His smile, though dazzling, hid shadows she wasn't ready to confront. And as much as she believed destiny had finally delivered her happy ending, the truth was far more complicated. Because sometimes, the most perfect gentleman is the one carrying the most dangerous secret. The evening was warm, the kind that wrapped the town in a golden glow as the sun dipped below the horizon. Emily had no idea that this night would mark a turning point in her life. Ryan had invited her to a small gathering at a local restaurant, saying it was nothing special, just a chance to spend time with friends. But Emily noticed the way he seemed distracted, checking his phone, whispering to one of his buddies, almost as if something bigger was brewing beneath the surface. Her heart raced with anticipation, but she told herself it was just nerves, the sweet kind that come when love is in the air. When the lights dimmed slightly and the chatter of the room quieted, Ryan suddenly rose to his feet. He cleared his throat, and in that instant, all eyes turned to him. Emily froze as he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her heart nearly stopped. Time seemed to slow down, every detail magnified, the glimmer of the box in his hand, the surprised gasps of those around her, the way Ryan's smile seemed almost too perfect. And then, as if the world itself held its breath, he lowered himself onto one knee. Emily's vision blurred with tears before she even heard the words. The sound of her name, spoken with such intensity, felt like a dream come true. "Will you marry me?" Ryan's voice rang out, confident and charming, echoing in her soul. The crowd erupted into applause, some cheering, others snapping photos, capturing the moment that seemed pulled from the pages of a romance novel. Emily pressed her hands to her mouth, overwhelmed by emotion. For a girl who had always dreamed of love, this was the ultimate confirmation that destiny had found her. She whispered, "Yes," before her voice could fully find its strength, but the room heard it, and cheers rose higher. Ryan slipped the ring onto her trembling hand, his smile beaming as though this was the happiest moment of his life. Emily felt like she was floating, her chest bursting with joy, her heart expanding beyond its limits. This was the culmination of everything she had ever wanted, to be loved, to be chosen, to be promised forever. At that moment, she believed every fairy tale she had once thought was too good to be true. The ring sparkled under the soft lights, a symbol Emily thought would bind them together forever. Friends hugged her, strangers congratulated her, and even those who envied her couldn't deny the beauty of the scene. She felt like the world was finally giving her the recognition she had long been denied. Ryan kissed her hand, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her shiver. In that gaze, she saw passion, commitment, and everything she thought love should be. At least, that's what she wanted to believe. What Emily couldn't possibly imagine was that beneath Ryan's polished proposal lay a truth so cruel it would fracture her heart. To him, this wasn't about love, or forever, or even her happiness. It was about something far more twisted, a bet made in secret, a cruel game played at her expense. While Emily's tears fell from joy, Ryan's friends exchanged glances, holding back laughter that only they understood. And though she couldn't see it yet, her entire world was being built on a lie designed to collapse. The applause, the cheers, the camera flashes, all of it masked the reality she was blind to. She saw Ryan as her future, but to him, she was just the punchline of a joke too cruel to comprehend. In that moment, her innocence, her trust, her belief in true love became the stage for someone else's entertainment. She thought she was stepping into a fairy tale, but in reality, she was stepping into a trap carefully crafted by the man she adored. Emily's joy became a fragile thread, one that could unravel with a single word of truth. But for now, she remained blissfully unaware, lost in the fantasy of what she believed was real. She clung to Ryan's hand, to the cheers around her, to the illusion of happiness that had been offered so convincingly. She was the star of the night, but the cruelest part was that she didn't know the script had been written to mock her, not to celebrate her. And so, while Emily dreamed of wedding bells and forever promises, Ryan basked in the thrill of his deception. The crowd saw romance, Emily saw destiny. But Ryan's friends knew the darker reality. This was not love, it was a bet. A bet that would soon reveal itself in the most devastating way. Sophia had always been the kind of friend who noticed the little things others missed. She watched Emily glow with happiness after the proposal, her cheeks flushed with joy, her laughter brighter than ever. But Sophia also noticed Ryan's smirk when he thought no one was watching. She saw the way his friends nudged each other, chuckling under their breath, as though they were all in on some private joke. It was subtle, but it unsettled her. Something about the scene didn't sit right, and the unease lingered long after the applause faded. That night, while Emily replayed the proposal in her mind like a beautiful dream, Sophia's thoughts were clouded. She remembered the way Ryan leaned into his friend's ear right after sliding the ring onto Emily's finger. She remembered the quick burst of laughter that followed, a sound so out of place in what should have been a sacred moment. It was small, almost hidden beneath the cheers, but Sophia couldn't shake it. Why would anyone laugh during something so serious? Why did Ryan seem almost amused? Days later, Sophia began to pick up more signs. Ryan's attention toward Emily seemed to shift. He wasn't tender in the quiet moments. Instead, he looked distracted, sometimes even restless, as if the proposal had been nothing more than a performance he no longer cared to maintain. Emily, blinded by love, brushed it all aside, but Sophia's instinct screamed louder each day. She started to wonder if the fairy tale was as perfect as Emily believed, or if cracks were already beginning to show. When Ryan was with his friends, Sophia noticed how different he became. His voice grew louder, his tone cockier, his laughter sharper. It was as though he wore two faces, one polished and charming for Emily, another careless and mocking for his friends. Sophia caught fragments of conversations, little phrases like, the game, and she totally bought it, words that made her stomach twist. Emily might have missed them, but Sophia was paying attention, and every word fueled her suspicion. Sophia tried, gently, to bring her worries up to Emily. She asked questions, hinted at the odd behavior, but Emily dismissed them with a dreamy smile. "You're just overthinking," she'd say, clutching her ring like it was proof of a love too perfect to doubt. Emily's faith in Ryan was unshakable, her heart too invested to see any flaws. Sophia, though, couldn't ignore the voice inside her warning that something was deeply wrong. It was as if Emily was standing in the middle of a storm, and she couldn't even feel the rain. The more Sophia observed, the more convinced she became that Ryan was hiding something. She noticed the way his friends looked at Emily, not with respect, but with amusement, as though she were the subject of a story they all knew by heart. She noticed the whispers that stopped when she entered a room, the sideways glances, the poorly hidden grins. It was like walking into a play where everyone knew the ending except the one person living the script, Emily herself. Sophia's loyalty made the situation unbearable. She wanted to protect Emily, but how could she shatter her friend's happiness without proof? The thought of watching Emily's heart break was almost as painful as the secret she suspected Ryan was keeping. Yet, deep down, Sophia knew that truth had a way of surfacing, no matter how hard people tried to bury it. And in this case, the truth wasn't going to stay hidden for long. The whispers, the laughter, the careless remarks, they all formed pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture Emily refused to see. Sophia's chest grew heavy with the weight of what she feared was coming. Every time Emily gushed about wedding plans, Sophia's stomach tightened, knowing that beneath the surface, this love story might not be what it seemed. The closer Sophia looked, the more the illusion began to crack. And though Emily held tight to the belief that she was living her dream, Sophia's doubts grew louder, impossible to silence. Something dark was waiting to be uncovered, something that would change everything Emily thought she knew about love, trust, and the man she had agreed to marry. At first, Emily convinced herself that Ryan's distracted moments were just stress. Planning a future together was a big responsibility, she thought, and maybe he was simply overwhelmed. But as days turned into weeks, the excuses grew harder to believe. Ryan no longer looked at her with the same warmth that once melted her heart. His compliments became rare, and instead of asking how she felt, he seemed more focused on how their story made him look in front of others. Something subtle, yet painful, had shifted. Emily began noticing the little cracks that widened each day. Ryan canceled plans without explanation, brushed off her concerns, and spent more time with his friends than with her. He laughed louder with them, joked about things she didn't understand, and seemed to live in a world where she was no longer the center. The small gestures that once made her feel special, the flowers, the texts, the thoughtful surprises, disappeared like smoke. It was as if the man who had stolen her heart was slowly slipping away. At parties, Emily often caught Ryan standing with his friends, whispering and exchanging smirks. Once, she even overheard them talking about how easy everything had been, though the conversation stopped the moment she walked closer. Her stomach tightened with unease, but she pushed the feeling down. It was easier to believe she was imagining things than to face the possibility that her dream proposal might not have been what it seemed. Sophia, however, was no longer quiet. She reminded Emily of the strange laughter, the whispers, the uneasy moments that kept piling up. But Emily wasn't ready to hear it. She clung to the memory of Ryan on one knee, the ring glistening in the light, the crowd cheering as he declared his love. How could something so beautiful be tainted with betrayal? Yet the more she tried to silence the doubts, the louder they became in her heart. The signs kept showing, no matter how hard Emily tried to look away. Ryan made jokes at her expense, sometimes in front of friends, brushing them off as just teasing. But the sting lingered, leaving her feeling small. He seemed less interested in wedding plans, dodging conversations about dates and venues, while spending more time bragging about the proposal itself. The story wasn't about their love anymore, it was about his ego. Emily felt the weight of disappointment pressing down on her chest. The man she believed was her forever no longer treated her like a partner. He treated her like a trophy he had already won, something to display but not cherish. Each time he laughed with his friends instead of listening to her, she felt another piece of her heart break. Yet she still hoped there was an explanation, a reason that would make sense of the growing distance. Nights became harder. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the proposal to the present. She remembered the way Ryan's eyes sparkled when he held the ring, but now those same eyes looked cold and distracted. She tried to convince herself that love could overcome doubt, that patience could heal the cracks, but her intuition whispered otherwise. Something was wrong, and it was only getting worse. Her friends began to notice too. The glow that once surrounded Emily dimmed, replaced by quiet hesitations and forced smiles. When asked about wedding plans, she fumbled with vague answers, unwilling to admit that the dream was slipping away. Deep down, Emily feared that her fairy tale was crumbling, piece by piece, and that she was the only one still holding on to it. The signs were all there, mocking smiles, broken promises, careless words. Emily's heart was telling her a story she didn't want to hear. But the truth was building like a storm, waiting for the moment when it would finally break open, revealing what Ryan had been hiding all along. Sophia couldn't keep it inside any longer. She had overheard Ryan talking to his friends, the words cutting through her like ice. The proposal, the tears, the smiles, all of it was a lie, a game he had played just to see if Emily would say yes. Her stomach turned, and her chest ached with the weight of the secret she now carried. She knew that Emily's world was about to shatter, and the thought of it made her hands tremble. For days, Sophia wrestled with the decision. Should she tell Emily now, before the pain grew deeper, or wait and hope the truth revealed itself in a way that was gentler? Every time she saw her friend's glowing face, she felt guilt. Yet, every time she remembered Ryan's laughter, his cruel smirk, the words, the joke of the year, she knew that Emily could not stay in the dark forever. The truth had to come out. Sophia decided she could no longer watch her friend be humiliated in silence. She picked up her phone repeatedly, hesitating with every call, every message she considered sending. The fear of Emily's heartbreak battled with the urgency to protect her. Deep down, she knew that the longer the secret remained hidden, the harder it would hit when finally revealed. And yet, telling the truth meant stepping into a storm of emotions that could leave Emily broken. Meanwhile, Emily remained blissfully unaware. She spent her days lost in the fantasy of wedding plans, imagining a life full of love, laughter, and endless possibilities. Each text from Ryan seemed to confirm her dreams. Every gesture, every smile, every casual touch felt like proof that he was the man she had always hoped to find. She had no inkling that the foundation of her happiness was built on deceit. Sophia watched silently, her heart aching with every moment Emily believed in the lie. She remembered all the small warnings, the strange glances, the laughter that didn't belong, and it all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Ryan's charm, his gestures, his love, it was all performance. The proposal, meant to be a pinnacle of joy, was instead a stage for cruelty. Sophia's mind raced with ways to prepare Emily for the revelation. She thought of gentle warnings, indirect hints, even playful questions to test Ryan's honesty. Nothing felt safe enough. The stakes were high. Emily's heart, her trust, her sense of reality, all teetered on the edge. Sophia knew that revealing the truth could break her friend, but hiding it would be far worse. One evening, Sophia made her choice. She approached Emily with caution, her words careful, measured, trembling with the weight of the secret she had to share. "Emily, there's something you need to know about Ryan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily's eyes sparkled with curiosity, unknowing that what was coming would turn her world upside down. Every moment of suspense stretched longer, every heartbeat a drum of warning. Emily's mind raced as Sophia revealed what she had heard. The disbelief in her eyes was immediate, her lips quivering, her hands clutching her chest. How could Ryan, the man she trusted, the man she loved, have orchestrated such cruelty? Every beautiful moment suddenly felt tainted, every memory a shadow of betrayal. The realization struck like lightning, leaving her stunned, trembling, yet oddly alert, as if her heart was preparing for the battle ahead. Even as Emily absorbed the truth, a spark of something else flickered inside her. Pain, yes, but also determination. Betrayal had left a wound, but it had also awakened a strength she didn't know she possessed. The story was no longer hers to enjoy blindly, it was hers to rewrite. And though the path ahead was uncertain, Emily knew one thing for sure, she wouldn't let Ryan dictate her fate any longer. Emily stared at Sophia, her mind racing as the truth unfolded before her eyes. The words hit her like waves, crashing over years of trust, dreams, and love. She felt a surge of disbelief, followed by a piercing ache in her chest. How could someone she adored, someone who seemed perfect, orchestrate such cruelty? The proposal, the smiles, the promises, it was all a game, a cruel joke at her expense. Her hands trembled, clutching the ring she had once cherished like it was a treasure. Tears blurred her vision, but Emily refused to cry in silence. Her anger bubbled beneath the surface, a storm ready to break. She replayed every interaction with Ryan, now tainted by the revelation of his deceit. The flowers, the dates, the compliments, they had been hollow, meaningless gestures designed to manipulate her emotions. Every detail she had held dear now carried the bitter taste of betrayal. And yet, amidst the heartbreak, a flicker of clarity emerged. She scrolled through her phone, rereading the messages Sophia had captured. The mocking words, the sneers disguised as jokes, the deliberate plans to humiliate her, it was all there. Emily's heart throbbed with a mixture of grief and fury. She realized how deeply she had been deceived, how carefully Ryan had crafted this charade. And in that moment, she understood the stakes. She could either crumble under the weight of the truth or rise stronger than ever. Emily's first instinct was disbelief. Could it really be true that the man she loved, the man she had trusted with her heart, had treated her like a pawn? The cognitive dissonance tore at her mind, and she struggled to reconcile the Ryan she knew with the Ryan she had just discovered. Her world felt fragile, suspended between the life she imagined and the harsh reality before her. And yet, amidst the pain, determination began to take root. Sophia's presence was steady, grounding Emily as the storm of emotion raged inside her. "I had to tell you," Sophia said softly, "because you deserve the truth before it's too late." Emily nodded, gripping Sophia's hand, feeling both comforted and enraged. The betrayal was monumental, yet in sharing it, Sophia had given her the first tool to reclaim control. Emily realized that knowledge, though painful, was the first step toward empowerment. Anger simmered, sharp and vivid, coursing through Emily's veins. She thought of Ryan laughing with his friends, mocking her innocence and trust. The audacity, the manipulation, it fueled a fire she hadn't known she possessed. Emily's grief was no longer passive, it transformed into resolve. She refused to be a victim in the story he had written, determined instead to take pen in hand and create her own ending. Questions raced through her mind. How could she confront him? What could she reveal without losing her composure? Emily knew the public humiliation he intended for her could be turned around. She imagined standing tall, exposing the truth with calm precision, and watching him crumble under the weight of his own lies. The idea ignited a sense of purpose that had lain dormant, waiting for this very moment to emerge. As she planned her next moves, Emily felt the first hint of relief. Betrayal had been revealed, and while the pain was sharp, the truth offered clarity. She could no longer live in illusion, no longer trust blindly. And with that clarity came strategy, a way to reclaim her dignity and rewrite the narrative. The stage was set for her to act, and she knew exactly how to turn the tables. In that moment, broken but not defeated, Emily realized something profound. Strength is born from pain, and courage often emerges in the darkest hours. She looked at Sophia, nodded with a mixture of gratitude and determination, and silently vowed that Ryan would never see her as anything less than formidable. What had been meant to humiliate her would instead become the catalyst for her greatest triumph. Emily sat alone that night, her mind racing through the cruel truth she had just uncovered. But instead of sinking into despair, a sense of determination started to bloom. She realized that Ryan had underestimated her, assumed her vulnerability would keep her silent. That assumption ignited a spark inside her, a fire she hadn't known she possessed. Emily decided that if he wanted to play a game, she would rewrite the rules, and she would not let herself be the pawn. She began planning carefully, thinking through every interaction, every possible moment where she could turn the tables. It wasn't about revenge in a mean-spirited way, it was about reclaiming her dignity and showing Ryan, and everyone else, that she was not to be toyed with. Emily imagined confronting him publicly, exposing his lies calmly and clearly, turning his power over her into his downfall. The idea brought a strange sense of exhilaration. Every detail mattered. Emily replayed his words, his gestures, his smirks, and she stored them all as ammunition for the moment she would act. She refined her approach, considering timing, tone, and the audience. Every plan she made was calculated, precise, and built to protect herself while revealing the truth. In her mind, she saw the scene playing out perfectly, her strength standing in stark contrast to his arrogance. Emily also drew strength from Sophia, who reminded her she wasn't alone in this. Together, they reviewed evidence, messages, and inconsistencies in Ryan's story. Sophia's support gave Emily confidence, a reminder that even in betrayal, there could be allies who cared. This realization made her feel empowered rather than victimized, ready to face the humiliation that Ryan had intended for her, armed with truth and resolve. At the same time, Emily began to notice changes within herself. She felt less fragile, less naive, and more in control of her emotions. Her heartbreak transformed into a steady resolve. Each memory of Ryan's manipulation was no longer a source of shame, but a lesson in self-worth and vigilance. She knew that confronting him was not just about humiliation, it was about demonstrating strength, intelligence, and grace. Emily rehearsed scenarios in her mind, imagining how Ryan might react when faced with undeniable proof of his deceit. She envisioned his surprise, his attempts to recover, and ultimately, his public exposure. The thought of reclaiming her narrative, turning the cruel joke against him, fueled her courage. For the first time since the proposal, Emily felt empowered in a way that had nothing to do with romance, and everything to do with her dignity. She also considered her audience, the friends and acquaintances who had witnessed the proposal, the ones who had cheered, laughed, or silently observed. Emily knew that their perceptions could shift dramatically once the truth emerged. And she wanted them to see not a broken woman, but a woman who refused to be defined by another's cruelty. That thought steadied her, giving her clarity and purpose. As Emily finalized her plan, she felt a strange mix of anticipation and calm. She was no longer trapped in the role Ryan had assigned her. Instead, she was preparing to take control, to show the world her resilience. Each step of her preparation reinforced her courage, her intelligence, and her ability to navigate the situation with elegance. The turning point was no longer just an idea, it had become action in motion. By the end of the night, Emily's heart had shifted. She was no longer just the woman who had been deceived, she was a strategist, ready to reclaim her story. Her tears of betrayal were replaced by a quiet determination. And in that calm before the confrontation, she understood that the power to rewrite her narrative rested entirely in her hands. The next chapter would be the moment she transformed humiliation into victory. The evening of the gathering arrived, and Emily could feel the tension in the air. Ryan walked in confidently, already expecting to control the room with his charm, to humiliate her in front of friends and acquaintances. But Emily had prepared. She had rehearsed every word, memorized every detail, and strengthened her resolve. This time, she wasn't vulnerable, she was ready. The shift in energy was subtle but noticeable to anyone paying attention. As the crowd gathered, Ryan prepared to reveal the bet, assuming his friend's smirks would add weight to his cruel plan. Emily stepped forward first, her voice calm but commanding, capturing the room's attention. She began to recount the events, presenting facts with precision and clarity, sharing the messages, the whispers, and the evidence Ryan thought would remain hidden. The atmosphere shifted, curiosity turning into shock among those watching. Ryan's confident smirk faltered the moment the truth began to surface. Emily revealed every manipulation, every joke he had made at her expense, exposing the cruelty behind his perfect mask. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading through the room as people processed what they had just heard. Emily's composure stood in stark contrast to Ryan's crumbling facade, and the power of the moment made it impossible for anyone to ignore the truth. Friends who had once cheered for Ryan now exchanged looks of disbelief. They had admired him, but the clarity Emily provided turned admiration into judgment. Emily's words were precise but measured, never cruel. Her goal was exposure, not vengeance. Every sentence she spoke reinforced her strength, her intelligence, and the fact that she had been wronged. The weight of her dignity pressed upon the room, leaving no space for doubt. Ryan tried to recover, his laughter nervous, his explanations faltering. The confident man who had orchestrated her humiliation now stumbled under the light of truth. Emily watched, steady and composed, as the very audience he had hoped to impress turned against him. The power dynamic had reversed. It was Ryan's turn to feel the sting of embarrassment, the consequences of his deception now fully visible to everyone present. Throughout the confrontation, Emily maintained control of her emotions. She refused to let anger dictate her words, instead using clarity and precision to communicate the depth of his betrayal. The room hung on every word, captivated by her courage and the sheer audacity of revealing the truth so publicly. Each reaction from the crowd further cemented her victory over the situation Ryan had intended to dominate. As whispers of disbelief grew louder, Emily's heart swelled, not with revenge, but with pride. She had reclaimed her narrative, transformed humiliation into empowerment, and demonstrated that strength often emerges from moments of betrayal. People looked at her with newfound respect, recognizing the courage it took to confront lies and expose deceit with dignity and grace. Ryan's attempts to salvage his image were futile. The audience had witnessed the full extent of his manipulation, and the truth left no room for charm or excuses. Emily's victory was quiet but undeniable, a testament to the power of self-respect and careful preparation. Her heart, though still tender, now held a sense of triumph and liberation that he could never take away. By the end of the evening, Emily walked away from the confrontation with her head held high. She had turned the tables, reclaimed her story, and proven that betrayal, no matter how cruel, could be met with courage and intelligence. And in the quiet shadows, someone who had always respected her quietly admired her strength, hinting at a love that was real, kind, and lasting, far different from the deception she had endured. After the public confrontation, Emily felt a mixture of relief and empowerment unlike anything she had experienced before. The weight of betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined her. She had faced the humiliation intended for her and transformed it into proof of her strength. Every glance from the crowd, every nod of respect, reminded her that she had not only survived but thrived in the face of deceit. Emily's friends came forward, offering hugs and words of admiration. They had watched her courage unfold, witnessing how gracefully she handled the truth. Their support reinforced what Emily had always hoped, that real strength lies not in hiding from pain, but in confronting it with dignity. She realized that her victory was not just personal, it was a lesson to everyone watching about the power of self-respect. In the following days, Emily focused on healing and rediscovering herself. The betrayal had left its mark, but it also ignited a newfound resilience. She spent time reflecting, prioritizing her own happiness, and embracing the lessons the experience had taught her. No longer would she allow anyone's deceit to dictate her emotions or sense of self-worth. Emily also noticed someone who had quietly admired her throughout the ordeal. Daniel, the kind and steady presence in her life, now stepped forward, offering genuine support and love. Unlike Ryan, his intentions were sincere, and Emily felt a connection rooted in respect and shared understanding. For the first time, love felt safe, nurturing, and authentic, far removed from the cruelty she had endured. As she rebuilt her life, Emily understood a crucial truth: heartbreak and betrayal do not mark the end of happiness. They are, instead, catalysts for growth, awareness, and strength. Every tear she had shed, every moment of doubt, had prepared her to recognize real love, true respect, and meaningful connection. The pain had not defeated her, it had sharpened her sense of self and clarified what she deserved. Emily also became more attuned to the signs of deceit and manipulation, understanding that awareness and self-confidence are powerful tools. She reflected on Ryan's arrogance in the game he had played, recognizing the importance of trusting one's instincts and valuing genuine intentions. In doing so, she found empowerment not only in confronting betrayal but in using that knowledge to shape her future. Her social circle noticed the change too. Emily exuded confidence, grace, and resilience that inspired others who had faced similar situations. Friends and acquaintances began to see her as a symbol of strength, proof that one could rise above humiliation with dignity. The respect she earned was deeper than admiration. It was acknowledgement of her courage and intelligence in navigating a deeply painful experience. Emily knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she no longer feared them. She had learned that strength often emerges from adversity, and that true victory is about reclaiming one's story, emotions, and self-worth. Betrayal had tried to break her, but she had turned it into a stepping stone toward empowerment and self-discovery. With her heart open yet cautious, Emily embraced the future. She was no longer the woman deceived, humiliated, or underestimated. She had turned pain into power, betrayal into awareness, and heartbreak into clarity. And in that transformation, she discovered that true victory is not only about overcoming others, it's about conquering fear, reclaiming dignity, and embracing love that is genuine, respectful, and enduring. This story reminds us that true love cannot be built on lies, and no one deserves to be used as a joke. Emily showed that courage and dignity can defeat betrayal, and that humiliation can be turned into strength. If you were in Emily's place, what would you have done? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to hear more emotional wedding stories filled with betrayal, secrets, and unexpected victories.